Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the Therapist Take podcast. I have a special bonus episode for you guys. As you may or may not have been aware, Carrie and I have taken a small break from the podcast, not because we've needed any kind of rest from it or anything. It's just that we hold those podcasts on Fridays at 12:30 Central Standard Time live. And sometimes we have other things scheduled during that time that we have to tend to. And that's what's happened. And so I thought I would go ahead and post another bonus episode. And so this is actually the very first Therapist Take episode. So when we first started the podcast, it really was just a live broadcast on YouTube and Facebook. And then we decided to transition that into the audio platforms. And so I think the first episode on the audio platforms is on scary relationships. But this one is actually the very first one, which is the Karen phenomenon. And so we wanted to start out with kind of a cultural phenomenon that was kind of lighthearted to kind of just kick off this what has now become a podcast. And so anyways, so in this episode we are talking about the Karen phenomenon, which I think most of us have heard of by now because it's still quite popular, and my heart actually goes out to all the people of the world whose actual names are Karen. I'm sure there's an extra amount of pressure on you to behave well, but anyways, we're going to talk about that. And so I'm not going to take up any more of your time. I hope you enjoy this episode. So let's get into it. So we decided to take kind of a topic that I think, as you see, as we talk more about it, you're gonna see kind of the serious side of it. But on the surface, I think maybe we picked it just because it's very popular in our culture, and it's kind of fun to some degree, unless it's happening to you, right? Right. Okay, and that's the Karen phenomenon. So,
all right, share what that is to you, Josh.
Okay, let me start with the origins of it, because I learned this I learned it a little bit before we decided to do this episode. I know you just learned this like yesterday or this morning or something. But it was in the just kind of researching the question of where did it start?
Right.
Do you remember Bye Felicia?
Yeah.
Do you remember where it came from?
I know it came from a movie, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's from Friday.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. I thought that's what it was.
Where Ice Cube's ex-girlfriend keeps showing up. Her name's, or I can't remember if it's, no, it's not his ex. I think it's some other character. Her name's Felicia, and he's just like, bye, Felicia. And that kind of came on scene and was used. And I think people still use it to some degree. But bye, Felicia is more like, it's dismissal. Okay. It's not an insult to you, right? If someone's like, bye, Felicia, it's like, I don't want to talk to you.
Done.
Yeah, it's still kind of rude, right? I mean, it's not a very kind thing to say to somebody. But Karen definitely carries a lot more weight with it now, and I think that we're going to show you guys this clip from Dane Cook. It's generally believed that it originated from this bit that Dane Cook did, and we're just going to play for you guys an audio clip to get kind of the idea of it. I think I should have looked up the year, but I want to say it was around 2005 or 2007.
Oh, okay.
But I don't remember the term.
Gaining steam,
right?
Recently.
Still more recently. So we'll go ahead and play that clip for you guys.
There is one person in every group of friends that nobody fucking likes. Example: Karen is always a douchebag. When she's not around, you just look at each other and go, God, Karen!
So I don't know why he chose the name Karen. It probably wouldn't have been the name I chose, and I'm not going to pick one because I don't want to insult anybody with that name that's watching.
Right.
But I bet you money that you and I have the same name, but we probably... Let's not give those clues, because people would be like, you can't say that and then not tell us.
Right, right.
But all of you out there, too, probably, you probably think of, there's probably a name you would pick, right? So I don't know why he chose Karen. And I'm not really even real sure if that's really where it all started, or if it's some kind of coincidence that happened, right? But then, of course, in that, you saw on that on the video screen, I think, is that Kate?
Kate Goslin.
Kate Goslin, right? So she kind of became the meme
the first meme of Karenicity, which I think is a kind of funny concept too. So you asked a question like, what does it mean to me? So I'm going to say me, and then you tell me for you. Okay. To me, Karen means a lot of things now, but let's just like, if we just back up like a year ago, I would say that a Karen would refer to a privileged white female that is mean, I don't know, reactive, mean, like making mountains out of molehills. I mean, but I think really, the key component is the privilege showing through. So it's always seemed like it was someone who might be considered a little well-to-do, and then looking down upon people who aren't as privileged as they are, but it always seemed to kind of be geared toward white women, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute too. So.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's that way anymore. I think it's evolved. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I guess the way I've thought of it, especially from the negative perspective, is somebody who is kind of trying to have status over somebody, trying to, have power over and get their ways over people who are less of power. Another way of referring to people that are acting very entitled and ridiculous.
Right.
I think mountains out of molehills makes sense. And kind of also it had this selfish, narcissistic, I'm more important than anybody else vibe at the core of it, right?
Yeah, definitely some narcissism involved there.
Sure.
But it's also like losing your mind a little bit, in a certain situation. So when you say like it's evolved some, like how have you seen, like what are you referring to?
Well, I guess that when it first came about, just my personal observation of it was it was a funny way, right, to describe somebody or some situation that seemed silly or ridiculous. It was humorous. I think, of course, as a feminist, for a minute though, why is something narcissistic, selfish, over the top going to be ascribed to females?
Right.
And I think that's where I've started to see the meaning shift as far as comfort level in using that perspective, and then kind of the class and I guess what would we say, ethnicity. That started to feel, I don't know, I started to have conflicting feelings about it.
Right. So that's the piece that really made me kind of take a step back before buying into like this cultural phenomenon. I still get a little uncomfortable with it.
Sure.
Because even though it has evolved some, like basically anybody can be a Karen at this juncture, right? But it's still, the name is still mostly attributed to females, to women, and even in the attempt to make it about men, you'll hear people say, "Oh, this is a male Karen,"
right?
Or they'll say Darren, which rhymes with Karen.
It does make me laugh. But
I mean, I'm not saying there's not a part of me that has kind of enjoyed this experience,
acknowledgement of this,
right?
Yes.
Yeah, like just like it's more. It's not even really out of amusement. It's more out of like, is this really happening?
Right.
Right. So yeah, that piece of it, and I truly, as a guy, I don't know if it's okay to get involved, and I have to some degree. I don't want to like, I need to be authentic. I definitely have held back to a large extent on just saying like, you're a Karen, or this is a Karen,
right.
Because it's just, there's something about it. It just feels like it's not really helping the feminist movement,
right? Well, I think that's the hard part about this, right? Is that it is calling attention to something that I think is important. Why do people think they get to use their status, right, to get more things, to keep them even higher on the totem pole, right?
There's no question about that.
Absolutely.
So there are some mixed emotions.
Absolutely, but again, ascribing it to one group of people,
right?
Well, that's when again I start to get that. Oh, I don't like that limiting space that we're putting people in.
Yeah. And the group that is mostly concerning for me are women.
Sure.
That's the group. Sure. Like, it's not necessarily any, ethnic group or religious group or anything like that. It's mainly just like women have worked really hard to get where they are, and there's still a long ways to go. And I definitely don't want to be on the wrong side of history on something like this, right? Because it just got everybody stirred up, and everybody just jumped on board. Next thing you know, it's like, oh, that probably wasn't good, So it's just something, it's just something for anybody watching, like maybe to take a step back and with any cultural phenomenon like this, and and ask yourself, is do I really want to be a part of that?
Right. Or how do I use this in a way that's helpful, makes me grow? Like, I think another important thing to say is that we've probably had our own moments where we
that's the other piece.
Hit the nail on the head with this phenomenon, right?
Yes.
And to have the awareness, for me, when it recently happened, I say recently, a few months ago, I had the awareness of going, oh my gosh, this is a Karen moment. But the train had already left the station for me. And so it just went all the way through, right? But I guess at least nothing good comes from after you say at least.
I mean,
but at least I knew that I had been, as you had said, lost my mind a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that, of course, whenever you have the experience of the thing that you feel bad about, it brings you, it should bring you to feeling more collectively connected to humans instead of separate or better than others.
Yeah. I think for me, I'd be looking around going, I hope no one caught that on camera.
Or no one knows me.
Right. Yeah. So at least no one filmed it. That's what I'd be thinking. At least nobody filmed
There's
that.
There's an at least.
But I think, you make a good point that we all have it in us.
Yeah.
And I think if you haven't had a Karen moment, then you haven't lived long enough, or you're lying to yourself.
Yeah, or your poor self-assessment skills. Right.
You're so nice.
I know. But there it is.
But I think that's the other piece too that that's made me pause with it, is like, I definitely have had some moments. I will say, and this isn't because I'm somebody that's super put together or anything, it is not common for me to do that, but that's not because because I'm the poster child of mental health or emotional health or emotional reactivity. A lot of that has to do with just a discomfort with that type of emotional experience. So, but it has happened for sure. I've had my own version of Karen moments where I'm like, that wasn't good, and again, thank God nobody was recording.
No one, as far as you know.
As far as I know, it could be something out there of me just erupting.
Right.
But I think that's the other thing too, is like, what if, because one of the things we're going to talk about down the road is cancel culture.
Yeah.
And so, how many people are being blasted all over YouTube or Facebook or wherever, the one time that they did it.
I know.
The one time that they had a weak moment, or and also the other thing too, we don't know what's going on in their lives.
Right.
And I do think that definitely, some people are having mental health crises, some people are in relational crises, and some people just had a bad day.
Right.
Period.
Right.
And they just it doesn't make it okay to take that out on somebody, but I also don't think it makes it okay for us to make this one thing make it who they are.
Blast it on or glue it onto that person's identity.
Absolutely. I know that over the years, our culture has had its various ways of canceling. So
and I also feel like we have to be in defense of the actual name Karen.
Yeah.
Because very, 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 very few people pick their name.
Yeah.
Right? And so I just also feel knowing people with that lovely name, that I would hate to be my name to be associated with something that is this global and this negative, and have no control over
so that. It's interesting you brought that up, because I didn't know if I was going to bring that up or not, because I have felt bad for I have friends whose name are Karen, or is Karen. But yeah, I think we can all probably think of somebody who has the name Karen, and I do feel bad that I don't know. I have never asked them because I'm afraid to, right?
Right.
But I was listening to someone talk about that and saying that their approach was that they don't feel bad for people whose name is Karen because their perspective was that they could rally together to say we are going to make it a mission to give Karen a new identity. To say that this Karen phenomenon has happened does not represent all Karens. That there is a group of Karens that are activists, good people, trying to make a difference in the world, and they will stand up to exactly the same people that are being labeled as Karens. And so I thought that was just an interesting take on that.
Sure.
Yeah. You were kind of touching on something that I thought would be a good way to kind of round this out. Oh, by the way, before we get into that, the Karen restaurants.
Oh, yeah.
Karen's diners.
Which I didn't know existed until the research either.
Yeah. Like, I feel like the Karen phenomenon hasn't been around that long. That's what it feels like to me. But there's like a ton of restaurants. Like, so this phenomenon is being capitalized
Had quite
on.
impact, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think their slogan is something like bad service, good food, or something like that. And so
is it supposed to give Karens a platform to be a Karen? Is that kind of what it is?
I think the people, you go there and you get your wait staff, and the whole people, all the people that work there are Karens. And you just have to go to YouTube and watch some clips. I was going to put some on here, but I was like, I'll just let you go watch them because it's pretty tough. I don't know if I could do it.
Yeah,
I don't. Because they are.
I don't think that where you want to be spending recreational time. Yeah.
You have to. I mean, I think there's even a part of us when we know people are joking.
Right.
Like there's still, it's still like, like I don't like that.
Yeah.
So, but I think there's one in St. Louis. So maybe if we ever pass it.
In St. Louis.
Is there a positive side to it? Has it taught us anything?
Sure.
What can we learn?
Yeah, I think we touched on it a little bit, but I'm okay with using this concept to help us all evaluate how we treat other people, how we acknowledge status and privilege in our daily, weekly interactions. I think that's helpful. I think examining your own bias, thinking about how you manage irritation, frustration, disappointment. I think that's all. I think that's got a helpful aspect to it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think that as much as there might be some things that need to change with it or evolve or whatever, I think a lot people are thinking about it. I mean, just by having a word to give it,
a phrase.
A phrase. My kids are have a word to attribute to this fear that they have sometimes, where they're like, Dad, I just don't want you to be a Karen, okay? So if I'm gonna go up to their school and talk to a teacher about this, so they just don't be a Karen.
Right, don't embarrass me, don't cross the line.
Right. So it does. I do think it's just got everybody thinking about not only their own behavior, but how their behavior affects other people.
Sure. Sure.
I actually love that part about it with my kids, because I don't know if my children would have the words to articulate. He's like, I just don't want you to embarrass me.
Right.
I don't want you to act a fool.
Right.
Right.
I don't want you to pull privilege. I don't want you to use anger to intimidate. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they can say, Dad, I don't want you to be a Karen.
Sure.
And we all know what that means.
Right. True. Yeah. Maybe if it wasn't a name, it would be easier. We wouldn't have these. If it wasn't humanized with a name, maybe we'd be more comfortable with it if it was a phrase, right?
Yeah.
A descriptor.
Well, see, I was thinking too, like maybe a dog's name, but I'm like,
no.
See?
See, immediately, no.
We can't do that to dogs.
No, I don't want to feel conflicted about dogs. Yeah. I like that being one simple thing.
They're
too
sweet.
Good
people.
Right.
They're the best people.
True.
Yeah, so we can't do that.
No.
But maybe it could evolve into something. But I would guess that nobody's naming their babies Karen.
I bet
right
that baby
now.
name list is Yeah, it's
Probably
not
down.
in the top 10.
But maybe Felicia will make a comeback on the baby name.
Maybe things just get used up. Maybe they're too much of a stamp of the time period, and people
Flo.
are ready to move on.
We get Flo back in.
Okay, you work on that.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much.
That's our take.
That's our take on the Karen phenomenon.
Right.
And so, but we appreciate everybody who has tuned in and watched this and has supported us along the way. So thank you.
Thank you.